Yo, welcome back everybody to Layup Lines, the show where I, your host, DaRock, go through my picks and predictions for every game on Tuesday in the college basketball landscape, as well as recapping the game from this past night's action. So let's start there. Here on this big Monday, we had the first game of the doubleheader, Virginia with a 60-38 win over Miami. Just absolutely defensive, dominant game from the Cavaliers, holding the Hurricanes to less than a point a minute. Pretty impressive. Reese Beekman led the way scoring-wise for the Cavaliers with 16 points and 7 assists. And that's also the 7th straight win for UVA, a team that a lot of people had on the bubble, but I think is slowly creeping their way here into the tournament with this hot stretch. And then the second game, quite the doozy. Once again, when these two teams get together, the Kansas State Wildcats knock off their in-state rivals, 4th-ranked Kansas Jayhawks, 75-70 in overtime. The Wildcats trailed by as much as 11 very early on in the second half, but Tyler Perry led the way with 26 points to lead the comeback for K-State to once again now 11-0 in overtime under Jerome Tang and knock off the Jayhawks in Manhattan for the second straight year. So then let's move on now to the games to watch tomorrow. Some of the games I'm going to be watching, what my picks are for those games. What I'm going to start with at 6:30 Eastern Time on the SEC Network, we have Ole Miss heading to the 15th-ranked South Carolina Gamecocks, who are 4.5-point favorites, and that's the side I'm going to be riding on this one. The Gamecocks went 2-0 last week with big wins over Tennessee and then Georgia, led by guards Talon Cooper and Michi Johnson. And they're a team that's been playing really well right now. Only 3 losses all year on the season, so glad to see them ranked. And Ole Miss is a team, I was watching them against Auburn a little bit on Saturday. Had a big lead in that one and blew it. They're a team that just in these big games, I don't really think has stepped up to me. So I think 4.5 points is a pretty low line, and one I definitely feel comfortable playing for South Carolina. Another game to watch. Clemson goes to the 3rd-ranked North Carolina Tar Heels. North Carolina's 8.5-point favorite in that game. They've already won the previous meeting this season in Clemson, 65-55. I think North Carolina proved this past week in how they are a Final Four caliber team. Armando Bacot was hitting Duke with the 2 small, and honestly they were. North Carolina has played really well in that game, offensively very dominant, and I think they keep that up again. I mean, we saw it the first game when they played Clemson, beating them by 10 there. And yeah, P.J. Hall was no match for Armando Bacot. So I think the Tar Heels once again pull it off. 8.5 seems like an easy number. I mean, considering they won by 10 on the road, I think they can win by 8.5 at home. And then the final, really the one big game that I'm going to be watching tomorrow, ranked-on-ranked matchup, the 23rd-ranked Texas Tech Red Raiders at number 13 Baylor, who is a 5.5-point favorite. The winner of this game is going to be tied for first in the Big 12 Conference, with Houston losing this past weekend, and then Kansas losing tonight puts them out of that running there. So this is a very big game. Baylor survived. A buzzer beater was called off after the buzzer for Iowa State this past weekend, so Baylor held on to win 70-68, while Tech lost at home to Cincinnati. This is a game I'm very torn, but I think 5.5 may be a little too much to lay for Baylor. But I like the way the Bears are playing. They've had some resiliency lately, winning 2 games last week. Tech's going the wrong direction a little bit here. So I don't know if I'd play 5.5, but I would definitely play Baylor on the money line to win this game at home. Then our ESPN Plus game of the day, just like we had last week. It's another Big 12 game. This time it's the 21st-ranked BYU Cougars head to Norman, taking on the Oklahoma Sooners, who are 1.5-point favorites. And I honestly don't really know why Oklahoma's is the favorite in this game. I mean, they were a team I was high on earlier in the year. They're undefeated, but they've lost 3 of 4. BYU, on the other hand, won 2 straight. A lot of media and metrics kind of have the Cougars as a pretty highly ranked team. Probably a little bit too high, but I think they're a better team than Oklahoma, just from what I've seen on the Sooners lately. So I would probably take not only Baylor plus the points, I'd take BYU plus the points, and I'd probably lay a little bit on the money line for them as well. Then the mid-major games today. I have 2 this week. The first one, 8 Eastern on CBS Sports Network. The 18th-ranked Dayton Flyers head to St. Joseph's, take on the Hawks there. St. Joseph's has won 2 straight games. Dayton's a team I've been pretty high on this year. They're tied for first in the A-10 now, with Richmond losing this past weekend. And they're a team that I've bet on a lot this weekend. I believe I didn't write it down. I believe the spread on this one is 2.5 in favor of Dayton. So while it is a road game that is a little scary, I think that's pretty. I've laid them at a lot bigger numbers on the road against some far inferior opponents compared to St. Joe's. St. Joe's is a pretty solid squad at 15-7 here on the year. But I like the Flyers. Like I said, they're ranked 18th in the country, only lost 3 games all year. I think they can survive St. Joe's in this one. And then the other one, a battle for first place in the American Conference at 9 Eastern on ESPN2. Charlotte heads to USF. USF's 2.5-point favorites. So like I mentioned, both these teams are tied for first in the American. The one team they are tied with is the Florida Atlantic Owls, who were darlings of the tournament last year. Yeah, all 3 teams are currently 8-1 in conference. USF's 15-5 on the year. Kind of sneaky, underrated, quiet team. Not a lot of speculation about them. With them being at home, 2.5-point favorites, one possession game at home, I like that. So if I'm going to bet on that one, I'll definitely be tuning in. But if I'm going to bet on it, I would definitely lean to go with the Bulls in that one. Then I have a couple upset picks here to wrap up the day. So the first one, line-wise, is actually not an upset. It's the 14th ranked Iowa State Cyclones head to Austin. They're going to take on the Texas Longhorns. Texas with a big win over the weekend, winning at TCU 75-66. They had a close loss earlier in the week, played Houston really tough on Big Monday last week. And then Iowa State, they're only 2-2 on the road in conference this year. Like I said, coming off a heartbreaking loss on Saturday, a game they could have maybe won. But that's one I could see, it gets them down. Like I said, you think you have the game won on a buzzer beater, gets called off. Definitely check that clip out if you haven't. So while Texas is 1.5-point favorites, I'm definitely be riding with that one. Also, hopefully you guys can watch this one. It's on Longhorn Network. No clue who has that. So if you have that, let me know, or let me know where I can find it. But while gambling-wise they are the favorites, rankings-wise this is an upset. So I'm going to go with Texas in that one. And then my other one, 7 Eastern on ESPN Plus, another Atlantic 10 game here. Shout out, I have some big Atlantic 10 fans that I'm friends with. The VCU Rams head to Fordham. VCU's minus 3.5-point favorites. They just had a big win against Richmond, who was previously first in the A-10 this weekend, until now they're tied again with Dayton because VCU knocked them off. And coming off a big win like that, and then you have to go on the road, I could definitely see that as a let-up spot for VCU. This is one also, too. I was looking at gambling-wise the money a little bit. According to Scores and Odds, 71% of the money is on VCU minus 3.5, or 71% of the bets. But the money is an even 50-50 split, meaning more of the sharps are on this Fordham plus 3.5. So I think that's definitely the side I ride, and maybe even sprinkle a little bit on the Rams to win. Last week I did hit my upset pick. Georgia Tech was 9.5-point underdog, and I picked them to win correctly. So we'll see. We'll see if we can keep that up again last week. Yeah, overall pretty solid week last week. So hopefully we can keep that up again. The only other game I really have here that I think is worth noting, Butler heads to the top-ranked UConn Huskies. UConn's 14.5-point favorites. This game's at 8:30 Eastern on Fox Sports 1. Butler with a really solid come-from-behind win on the road against Creighton. So who knows? Maybe they pull it off again. 14.5 points is kind of a lot, so I don't know if I'll be playing that. But UConn did look good against St. John's. They showed some resilience there in the second half. Pulled out a win. I definitely would think they'd win. There's going to be no value on that play. And since, that line's so high, I may just stay away from this one. But that's going to wrap it up for my picks for this Tuesday's slate of games. Let me know who you guys are rocking with in the comments, what you're riding, what you're tailing, any other games you're watching. And I will see you guys next week. Thanks for watching.